Well, let's give you an update from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Ukraine has umbered Russia to Islamic State after a video emerged online showing apparent Russian soldiers filming themselves beheading a Ukrainian captive with a knife. Militants from Islamic State in Iraq and Syria were notorious for releasing videos of beheadings of captives when they controlled swaths of those countries between 2014 and 2017. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called for the perpetrators to be punished. The Security Service of Ukraine has also launched a war crime investigation into that video.
There is something that no one in the world can ignore. How easily these beasts kill. This video of the execution of Ukrainian prisoners of war, the world must see it. This is a video of Russia as it really is. What kind of creatures are they? There are no people for them. A son, a brother, a husband, someone's child. This is a video of Russia trying to make just that the new norm. Such a habit of destroying life. This is not an accident. This is not an episode. This was the case earlier. This was the case in Bucha, thousands of times. Everyone must react. Every leader. Don't expect it to be forgotten. That time will pass. We are not going to forget anything. Neither are we going to forgive the murderers. There will be legal responsibility for everything. The defeat of terror is necessary. No one will understand if the leaders don't react. Action is required now. And we in Ukraine must focus on the front line as much as possible. Help as much as possible. Expel the occupier from our land. The main goal is to win. The main goal is strength for Ukraine to win. Defeat the occupier. Sentences to murderers. Tribunal for the evil state. Eternal memory to every person whose life was taken by Russian terror. Glory to all who fight against this evil. Glory to Ukraine.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin has reacted to that video circulating on social media, calling it awful, adding that its authenticity needs to be checked. The video, which has been heavily criticized by Ukraine, shows apparent Russian soldiers filming themselves beheading a Ukrainian captive with a knife. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said, quote, "First of all, we need to check the authenticity of this awful footage. Of course, this footage is awful, and first we shall check it. And when we could have a pretext to check whether or not this is true, whether it happened, and if it did, where and by whom it was done." He, however, called on all parties to check the veracity of the footage. In the meantime, the Kremlin has also said the outlook of the landmark UN-brokered Black Sea grain deal was not great, as promises to remove obstacles to Russian exports of agricultural and fertilizer exports had not been fulfilled. The grain deal is an attempt to ease a food crisis that predated what Russia calls its special military operation in Ukraine, but has now been made worse by most deadly military conflict in Europe since World War II. This agreement, due to expire next month in its current form, was first signed by Russia, Ukraine, Turkey and the United Nations in last July and twice extended. On paper, it allows for the export of food and fertilizer, including ammonia, from 3 Ukrainian Black Sea ports. While the West does not place sanctions on Russia's food and fertilizer exports, Moscow says that they are compromised by obstacles like insurance and payment hindrances, and it says must be removed for the deal to work properly. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said the current agreement is not working for Russia, despite some efforts by the UN to get the parts of the deal relating to Moscow's interest implemented. He said that no deal can stand on one leg and it must stand on 2 legs. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has said the Ukrainian forces have much of the capability they need to continue to be successful. Mr. Austin said that he had just spoken with his Ukrainian counterpart, Mr. Oleksiy Reznikov, and said he's confident that Ukrainian forces will continue to fight the enemy and not be driven by a specific plan.
and the leadership. I just spoke with my counterpart in Ukraine today, Minister Oleksiy Reznikov. We talked about a number of issues, but as we typically do. But he and the leadership remain focused on the task at hand, and I have every confidence that they will do what good leaders, great leaders do. They will fight the enemy and not be driven by a specific plan. They have a great plan to start. They have much of the capability that they need to continue to be successful. We've trained an enormous number of troops. We've provided a substantial number of platforms, and so I think he feels that they're in a pretty good position, and we'll stay focused on continuing to generate security assistance and capability so that they can continue to be successful whenever they choose to take up offensive operations.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said that Russia's detention of Evan Gershkovich and denial of consular access to the Wall Street Journal reporter sends a great message that people around the world should beware of even setting foot in Russia. Mr. Blinken, who formally designated Gershkovich as wrongfully detained, said the U.S. consular officials had no access to the journalist since his detention in March, in breach of the obligations under consular convention Moscow signed with Washington. Mr. Blinken also says that Moscow's actions will not do even more damage to Russia's standing around the world.
Yesterday that he is being wrongfully detained by Russia. President Biden had an opportunity to speak to his family today, I believe. I've spoken to your colleagues, including leadership of the Wall Street Journal, multiple times about Evan's situation. When I spoke to Foreign Minister Lavrov about a week ago now, just after Evan was detained, I of course pressed for his immediate release, but I also pressed for immediate consular access to him. The fact that Russia has not granted that access puts it, once again, in violation of international commitments it's made, commitments that are at the heart of diplomatic relations between countries and the ability of our citizens as well to be able to safely be present in other countries. I think Russia not following through on meeting its obligations to consular access, never mind the practice of detaining people arbitrarily for political purposes, is going to do even more damage to Russia's standing around the world, standing that has been in free fall, particularly since its reinvasion of Ukraine last year. And I think it sends a very strong message to people around the world to beware of even setting foot there, lest they be arbitrarily detained.
Canada has imposed new sanctions over Russia's invasion in Ukraine and pledged fresh military support for Kyiv. It is coming after Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau met with Ukrainian Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal in Toronto. Mr. Trudeau said that Canada will send 21,000 assault rifles, 38 machine guns and 2.4 million rounds of ammunition to Ukraine, and impose sanctions on 14 Russian individuals and 34 entities, including security targets linked to the Wagner Group. Canada has committed more than $8 billion Canadian dollars to Ukraine in financial, military, humanitarian and other assistance since January 22, just before the invasion at the end of February.
To maintain the pressure on the Russian regime, we're announcing new sanctions on 14 Russian individuals and 34 entities, including security targets linked to the Wagner Group. In addition, to further pressure Putin's enablers in Belarus, we're announcing additional sanctions on 9 entities related to the Belarusian financial sector. Today, we're announcing we'll be sending even more weapons. Sourced from Colt Canada, we'll be sending 21,000 assault rifles, 38 machine guns, and over 2.4 million rounds of ammunition. This will help the armed forces of Ukraine continue to defend their freedom and fight for Ukraine's territorial integrity.
U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has said the United States' commitment to its NATO allies is ironclad. She made this known at a meeting with Poland's Prime Minister in Washington. She said the two countries stand together in defense of the freedom of Ukrainian people.
When we first spoke over a year ago, it was to coordinate our respective responses after Russia launched its unprovoked attack on Ukraine. I have since traveled to Warsaw in March of 2022, where you graciously hosted me, and we demonstrated to the world the strength of our alliance in the face of Russia's aggression. While there, it was also my honor to meet with President Duda, to meet with Polish and American troops who are working together and working to defend NATO's eastern flank. We have been very clear, and the President has been very clear with President Duda as well, that the United States' commitment to our NATO allies is ironclad. And the commitment of the United States has resulted in fact, in increasing the number of troops, as you know, that we have sent to Poland. In fact, we have created a new permanent army headquarters because of that. Poland is a valued ally, a partner, and a friend, and we have an enduring relationship based on shared priorities and democratic values. So today is a continuation of the conversation that you and I started some time ago, and I look forward to strengthening and continuing to strengthen the relationship between our two nations. Welcome again.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. Today we stand together in defense of the freedom of the Ukrainian people. Many Americans may be asking themselves why Russia's aggression against Ukraine is so important for America as well, because it is important. It's critically important for Europe, that's clear. But why also for America? The answer is Russia's attack on Ukraine is only the beginning. The consequences of this war have already reached the USA. Poland wants to build the strongest army in Europe. That is why we want to cooperate with the most advanced defense industry in the world, which is the American industry. And Poland believes that only a strong transatlantic alliance is the answer to this specter of imperialism, colonialism, and nationalism.
Meanwhile, US CIA Director William Burns has said that Russia risks becoming an economic colony of China as its isolation from the West deepens following the invasion of Ukraine. Mr. Burns was speaking at an event at Rice University in Houston.
I think in the now category, in that urgent category, the issue that you mentioned, the deeply unfortunate leak of classified documents is certainly as intense as anything in that now part of the inbox as well. And, you know, it's something that the U.S. government takes extremely seriously. The Pentagon and the Department of Justice have now launched a quite intense investigation to get to the bottom of this. There's not a whole lot I can add to that at this point with that investigation going on. And if you look at the reality that Russia is becoming more and more dependent on China, and in some respects runs the risk of becoming an economic colony of China over time, dependent for, you know, export of energy resources and raw materials in that direction as well. That all adds up, in my view, to a huge own goal for Putin's Russia right now.
French President Emmanuel Macron attended a state banquet hosted by Dutch King Willem Alexander and Queen Maxima as part of his two-day state visit to Netherlands. The visit, the first in 23 years, is coming as Mr. Macron caused a stir by saying that Europe has no interest in accelerating the conflict in Taiwan and should become a third pole independent of both Washington and Beijing. Political actors on both sides of the Atlantic criticized the president's position as being too accommodating of China, just as it carries out military drills around Taiwan.
The return of war at the gates of Europe commits our two countries, once again uniting their determination to defend the territorial integrity of Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression, to defend European soil and our deals there once again, and the reorganization of the international landscape, shaken up by Brexit, weakened by the health crisis, strategic and commercial tensions, must lead us to support each other more than ever, to support this shared vision of the world, which multiplies the power of our common projects.
We have VOA's Anna Chernikova now. She joins me from Kyiv. Thank you, Anna, for joining us on The World today.
Good evening.
Let's begin with that video purporting the beheading of a Ukrainian soldier, which has sparked widespread outrage around the world. A war crime investigation by Ukraine's security services. Do you think that this is a Russian propaganda?
Very, very terrible footage that we all seen yesterday late evening Kyiv time. This again, once again, this is a certain video that similar videos we already seen with amputations and with shooting of the Ukrainian prisoner of war live, basically on the video. This is another shocking footage. Definitely should be investigated. Here in Ukraine, there are a couple of so there are different reactions. Definitely, first reaction is that this is a war crime that definitely should be investigated, and this is what President Zelensky said. This is what Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine mentioned in his statement, that basically this video demonstrates Russian soldiers acting worse than ISIS soldiers. This is his quote. Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine asked media and society not to share this video footage further because, first of all, it needs to be it needs verification and it needs investigation, definitely, and also not to try to find out the identity of the soldier, because this is the task that Security Service of Ukraine and Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Minister of Defense of Ukraine is currently having and doing. They're trying to find out who this person is and when this video, if this is authentic video, when this video was taken and where. Apparently this story will have additional details with some time as some time is coming. But again, another opinion here in Ukraine that it could be a certain type of video that was on purpose circulated in public eye. And was on purpose circulated at this particular point in order to scare Ukrainian society, to scare Ukrainian soldiers, or even to scare Russian soldiers somehow, of like demonstrating how things basically are done. So there are these different opinions, but what is for sure that this video, at least this is according to Ukrainian officials, that this video looks realistic, and definitely the identity of this soldier would be investigated, and the case in general would be investigated. Also, Ukrainian side is asking involvement of the international court and international investigators to join in and to give the final release of the final release for this case.
All right, but Anna, we know the Kremlin has already called for the verification of this video, which, I mean, everyone would agree to that because of the extent of damage control social media can cause. Has there been any history of a leaked video like this during the war, and have they even been verified in the past? And when they eventually come out to be true, or have there ever been fake news? What's the history being like in the past?
In the past, all these videos that we've mentioned with amputations of certain parts of the bodies, let's put it this way, of shooting, they were verified and they came out true. Again, this video, according to Ukrainian officials, looks quite realistic and looks that this is something that really happened. Again, we cannot, for the moment, independently verify it, and we cannot independently say that, find out what really is that, and when and where it was taken, and at which circumstances. But again, so we can just follow this official statements. To be honest, taking the history of previous videos, it looks like that this video would have similar outcome. And it looks like that the main goal of this video to go public is quite similar to the previous one. So basically to demonstrate the level of risks for Ukrainian soldiers, the level of, what they can face in the captivity, so to make them scared. And this is coming right at the moment when Ukraine is preparing this counteroffensive, which, according to officials in Ukraine, should begin either late spring or summer. So this would depend on various supply and other preparation points.
All right. And let's talk about Canada. It's yet again pledged more weapons to Ukraine. The Prime Minister says 21,000 assault rifles, 38 machine guns, and even 2.4 million rounds of ammunition will all be sent to Ukraine. How are Ukrainian troops reacting to receiving all of these new weapons in aid and all that? They must be excited, or motivated of some sort. What are you seeing?
Definitely motivation is getting higher, of course, with all the supplies coming in. However, Ukrainian officials highlighting, and also Ukrainian soldiers highlighting that definitely Ukraine needs more and needs more at the same time. So in order to start certain actions, Ukraine needs to have this supplies together, ready to go, basically. So it's definitely a great sign. It's definitely something that is perceived very positively, and which is perceived very, with an approaching positive plans. But again, Ukrainian officials and Ukrainian military, particularly officials, highlight that there are these various types of weapons which are needed as soon as possible and which are needed all together. So it's important that all the allies and from all the countries, all the allies understand this as well, and it looks like that everyone have this understanding, at least according to the outcomes of this recent meeting that we've seen and that we've reported on previously.
All right, thank you very much, Anna, for your time as always on The World Today, and please stay safe.
Thank you.
Prime Minister.